Hello, my name is Joshua Haney and I'm a saxophonist and educator. Today I wanted to make a really quick video explaining the basics of how to make a really great saxophone embouchure. The saxophone embouchure is among the most critical things that you can learn in order to produce a great sound and have an easier time playing the instrument, because the embouchure is the way that your body interfaces with the saxophone equipment. If your saxophone embouchure has problems, it'll simply be harder to play the instrument, your tone will be less developed, and ultimately playing the instrument will just be less fun for you. So first, let me demonstrate what a good saxophone embouchure should look like. So I have my setup here and I'm just going to play a few notes just so you can visually see what I'm doing. You notice that my embouchure generally has a rounded shape with a focus of bringing the corners in, has a cushioned lower lip, and the top teeth are used to support but not crush the mouthpiece. Now, that's kind of a technical verbal explanation. However, there's a really easy way for you to experience the correct saxophone embouchure without even having to use many words at all. First, you're going to take your thumb, whether it's your right hand or your left hand, doesn't really matter, just take your preferred hand. And I want you to pretend that you're sucking your thumb as if you were a toddler or an infant. Something like this. Now, I know sucking your thumb is not the most comfortable thing. However, I want you to really pay attention to what your body is actually doing when you do this. So let's do it one more time and really pay attention to how your lips, jaw, and teeth are interacting with your thumb. What you'll notice is that the lower lip covers the lower teeth, however, is not being pulled flat across the lower teeth. Instead, the lower lip forms a cushion which will allow the reed to vibrate freely. The top teeth aren't crushing your thumb. Obviously, that would hurt a lot. So the top teeth support the thumb and keep it in place without necessarily clamping down. In order to make suction, your corners of your lips must come in order to make that seal. So you can see the corners come right in and form a seal. Another important thing to think about is how much thumb you naturally took in. If you really think about it, you tend to take about as much as your thumbnail will allow, and that's, a little different from person to person, but tends to be pretty similar to how much mouthpiece one usually takes in on the alto saxophone. Again, there's a little bit of subjectivity to this because everyone's thumb is a different size and there's different sizes of saxophone mouthpieces, but it can be a nice reference for more or less how much mouthpiece you can start by taking in. Another important thing to think about is where the tongue is placed in relationship to the thumb when you take it in your mouth. So why don't we put our thumb in our mouth one last time and really pay attention to where the tongue is placed in relationship to the thumb. Naturally speaking, your tongue, I'm going to represent my tongue with my left hand here, would be naturally placed underneath of the thumb, or in translation to the saxophone, your tongue really should come underneath the mouthpiece a bit. A lot of band directors will say that the very tip of the tongue needs to make contact with the very tip of the reed, but I find this to not be true for most people. The saxophone mouthpiece is actually pretty long and intrudes into the mouth space a bit further than other instruments, so having the tip of the tongue making contact with the tip of the reed is a bit impractical and actually cause your tongue to collapse. Instead, you should have your tongue in a more natural position where there will be a slight arch and it'll actually have the slightly behind the tip of the tongue making contact with the tip of the reed. Again, this should all feel similar to how it feels to suck your thumb. So if we put all of these pieces together, let's come back to our saxophone mouthpiece and try to make the saxophone embouchure pretending that we're sucking our thumb this time. If you put your embouchure together in the right way, everything should feel relatively comfortable, there should be very little stress or pain on your face. One last detail to remember is try to keep your chin completely neutral. A lot of players like to think that they need to point the chin, or they otherwise activate some sort of musculature here that causes the chin to kind of look like a walnut. We don't want that. The chin has very little to do with making saxophone tone. All it needs to do is remain stable for the embouchure. Try your best to keep the embouchure stable. Now that doesn't mean rigid or firm or artificially stiff, but try not to move it around when, for example, going between octaves. So I'm going to make the saxophone embouchure and show you how my embouchure doesn't move when I'm doing octaves. If your A gets stuck in the higher octave, you're probably moving your jaw a bit too much, or you just need to loosen up slightly. If your A gets stuck in the lower octave, the opposite is true. You're probably opening up too much and you need to have a little bit more embouchure engagement. You should be able to get between these two octaves no problem. So that was just a little bit of a primer on the saxophone embouchure. I hope you found this helpful and that your saxophone embouchure, tone, and enjoyment of playing the instrument can improve. This is Joshua Haney, and I'll see you in the next one.